Third down and 20.
Hey everyone, welcome to episode 19. We're on episode 19 now. It's crazy. It's been a long season of the 3rd and 20 Dynasty Podcast. Thank you guys for all tuning in and listening. I appreciate it. All the viewers we've gotten. I saw that our mock draft the other day got a decent amount of views, even though the clowness mask got pulled out. I still appreciate everyone watching. Jake and JT, how are you guys doing?
We're doing great, Lounis. Good to be back.
Yeah. Can't believe we're almost done with the season. It's sad. But, in Dynasty, there is no offseason. So,
yeah, no,
ready to get. Yeah.
And I hope the listeners are ready for a whole ton of offseason draft and free agency content.
And coaching characters.
Yeah. Starting off right away, we had our wild card weekend this weekend. There were some pretty good games. We saw oh my god, I can't believe I'm forgetting his name. The Redskins quarterback,
Taylor Heinicke.
Taylor Heinicke
yeah. Is now, according to the R-Dash Dynasty, worth 4 firsts minimum. JT has.
I think that's absurd. It's 5 firsts at least.
It's not. Yeah, so that's they have some good content, but don't believe everything on that sub to the listeners. So getting started, so we have some dynasty highlights from this wild card weekend, starting with Jake. Jake, what stuck out to you?
What stuck out to me? Let me think about it. Circle the motherfucking wagons. Bill's moving on. Had to say it, but not really. My highlight of the week is Cam Akers. This man is a workhorse. I was telling you to buy him around week 6, 7 when he was not looking too good. And I said, buy low, buy low, buy low. And I'm telling you, he just showed out this week. He had 28 carries, 131 yards, and a touchdown. He really controlled this offense for the Rams, and it really paced the way for that offense against the Seahawks in route to a win. I guess my question to you guys is, when we did our running back rankings, I had him at 15. None of you guys had him in your top 15. Where do you guys have him now?
Yeah, so
that's a good question.
You want to go first, Lounis, or me?
You can go first.
All right. So, yeah, I wasn't as high on Cam Akers in the beginning of the season as you guys were. Maybe not so much, Lounis. We were probably on the same page, but not as high on him as you were, Jake. With that being said, it's tough for me to bump him up too high. I do like what I've been seeing from him. I do agree that where I had him was low. I mean, I never said to sell him, though. So it gets into a tough spot, right? Because there's so many good rookie running backs that have now appeared. Cam Akers was just the last of 4 or 5 that have also popped up. I guess CEH is now the one in question, but even him, he had a good, start middle of the season kind of area. So I gotta have him as I can't put him much higher than RB 15 still. RB 13 maybe. Yeah. That's why I'll stamp it down. RB 13. I've got him equivalent to Josh Jacobs, Miles Sanders kind of range. If Aaron Jones re-signs with the Packers, I'd bump Aaron Jones above him. But right now, I guess I'd have Aaron Jones under him just because of the uncertainty. But in that kind of tier of players, those second-year players who did okay. Aaron Jones is in his 3rd year, I believe, right? Or 4th year? Maybe he's in his 4th year.
4th year, his rookie year, I don't think he played much at all.
Yeah. So, but around those guys, basically, I can't put him much higher because once you get up there, it's those elite guys that have been in the league for a little while, and then the rookie running backs who did outperform him for the majority of the season.
Wondering, JT, where do you have him now? Obviously, you mentioned your total running back rankings, and this goes to you too, Jake. How do you compare him to the other rookie running backs? Obviously, Jonathan Taylor still number 1. Me personally, I have Dobbins too. I'm not 100% sure if you guys both also have Dobbins at 2. Where do you have Akers in that running back tier ranking? I'm guessing JT has Swift at number 2.
I do.
Yeah. Where do you have Akers in that ranking right now?
Yeah. So real quick, I'd have Taylor 1, Swift 2, Dobbins 3, Dobbins 3. Then it gets kind of tough.
Yeah, because Antonio Gibson is legit too.
I think Gibson's my 4. CH is my 5. I just feel like I'm doing Robinson dirty, like because he had such a great season, but he had such high usage. We'll talk about the new coach there later on. But like I just it's still hard for me to put him above Cam Akers because of what I've seen Cam Akers do. So Cam Akers and CEH are like right next to each other for number 4, and then right after that would be Robinson. Robinson would be 6.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, that's very fair.
Yeah, I'm slightly higher on him than you are. I think I'd have him as my solidified 3.
Over Gibson?
Yes, over Gibson. Behind Taylor.
So you have him over DeAndre Swift too?
No, Taylor Swift.
No, he has him over Dobbins.
Akers, and I have him over Dobbins. Yes. And the reason I have him over Dobbins is because, not just obviously that Baltimore team does run the ball a significant amount of times, but that is truly a 3-headed backfield between Dobbins, Gus Edwards, and Lamar Jackson himself. He gets so many rushing attempts that it's just going to eat into Dobbins' production. Like I said, I do like J.K. Dobbins and think he's a very good back to own, but I do have him below Cam Akers at this point.
That's fair. Yeah, because this has been absolutely insane running back class. I can get him into the top 15, but I don't know if I can go a lot high. Like, if you offered me straight up Akers for Josh Jacobs or Miles Sanders, like for me, I'm a Miles Sanders owner. If you offer me straight up Akers for Miles Sanders, I don't think I'm saying yes. Even though it's tough, and I know people can disagree with that. And
I
it's
think
close.
their value is just so similar. It's going to be preference. If you really believe in the Miles Sanders and where the direction that the Eagles are going to be going once they hire a new coach and after the draft, then like by all means, I completely understand that. But I just think Cam Akers' situation in LA is much more stable. You know Goff's going to be the quarterback. You know that McVay's going to be there, and you know that the offense is going to be pretty decent. So I think it's a safer bet there.
No, that's a fair point. It is a safe bet. I would definitely have him in my top 15 now. I'm probably putting him in the 10 to 15 range. Just because, like you guys said, I still have Taylor over him. I still have Dobbins and Swift over him. Clyde Edwards-Helaire barely over him. Barely. It's literally just because of his situation. Just off talent, like I think Akers has shown he's the more talented running back. But Akers has such a significantly better situation where I'm just like, it's close, but I lean Clyde Edwards-Helaire a little bit. And then I still, like JT said, I have him ahead of James Robinson. I think I'd put Akers ahead of Antonio Gibson, even though Antonio Gibson had a great season. I think he's going to be really good. Just what Akers has shown me the second half of this, or not even the second half, I'll say like the final fourth of this season, and the playoff game, I'd put him up there. So I'd probably have him around like 12, maybe 12, 13. That's how I think I have him at.
Do you have him much higher than that?
Man. Do I have him higher than that?
Yeah.
I would have to really look at it, but I would probably have him around 10 to 13 ish, so slightly higher than both of you guys. But we're pretty much on the same page. And man, I'm really upset because I tried to buy him so hard at like week 7, 8, like when he was just injured the whole time, and I just tried to buy low so hard and I couldn't come to a deal. But I really wish I could have because he's looking really good right now.
Jake, answer.
Yeah, the low window.
Jake, answer this quickly. Would you have Cam Akers as the RB1 in this class coming up?
Yes. I think that class last year.
That's a tough question.
I think that class last year was so good, and we just completely don't talk about it enough. Like we just said, we just named all those guys: Edwards-Helaire, Akers, uh, Taylor, Dobbins, Swift. Like all these guys are consensus top 15 to 20 running backs. So you don't find that many running backs, and we're not even talking. I'm disrespecting James Robinson, who finished running back 3-4. What did he finish on the year? Something like that.
I think RB4. Yeah.
So like, there's so many backs in this class, and they're all so good. And like, arguably, the one that had the best season was the one that went undrafted, which is crazy to think about. Meanwhile, in this draft class, it's more wide receiver heavy, more quarterback heavy. The running backs, I haven't fully taken a deep dive in them yet, but I'm not liking what I see so far. Even with the top guys, the Etiennes, the Najee Harrises of the world. So I would say Akers would be the number 1 running back in this draft.
I agree. I mean, I've been banging my fist on the table saying that stuff for a little while now, where like there's a reason why Travis Etienne and Najee Harris stayed behind. It's because they knew that they would get, drop down draft boards because of how many good running backs there are in last year's draft class. I'm sorry, and they knew that they would be much better if they stayed a year and were competing with this current year class. It works out for them. They're going to be probably 1 and 2. Didn't really work out for Chuba Hubbard. But I guess that's the risk you kind of take. Not that he would have been that high last year, I feel like, either. But yeah, I agree. Cam Akers, I'd probably, just because like you've also seen it too. Like what's going to happen. Like you don't know what you're going to get from these guys yet. So yeah, I mean, I can definitely see, a couple of these guys actually doing better than Cam Akers, but with the situation he's in and like what he was doing at the end of the season and now in the playoffs, like I'm just gonna go with the tried and true Cam Akers now and not have to worry about the future guys producing.
Yeah, I think that's a really fair point. So I'm gonna move on to my second highlight from last weekend, and that is from the same game, and it's what is wrong with Russell Wilson. So his stat line from this game against the Rams, who, albeit they are a good defense, they have Jalen Ramsey, they have Aaron Donald, who got hurt in this game on what looked like just a normal sack. But Russ went 11 for 27 for 174 yards passing, 2 passing touchdowns, and 1 interception. Clearly just not a good game from Russell Wilson. And his whole second half of the season really has not been good from a NFL standpoint as well as a fantasy standpoint. I'll pull up his fantasy numbers real quick from the second half of the year, but he rarely broke 20 points, which from a consensus, top 7, 8 quarterback, you're not happy with that. So his numbers
from week on, I got it for you, Jake. From week 8 beyond, he broke it once against Buffalo, just hit 20 against Arizona, and once against the Jets. So he did it 3 times in 8 weeks.
9,
which is not what you want to see. Yeah, which is not what you want to see from someone who's like consensus top 5 or 6 quarterbacks.
Yeah. So they obviously lost this week to the Rams. I think it was 31-20 was the final score, something like that. They fired their offensive coordinator, Brian Schottenheimer. What do you think's going on with this Seahawks offense? Like, are you concerned if you're a DK Metcalf owner? Are you concerned if you're a Wilson owner? Like, we've said sell Lockett a bunch on this podcast before, and I think now even more so with the change at and the offensive coordinator coming. What are your guys' thoughts here? Because I'm just scared, honestly, if I'm anyone on the Seahawks on the offensive side of the football.
Did you see the Tyler Lockett quote where he kind of threw the OC under the bus?
What'd he say?
Did you guys see that?
No.
So let me read the story because it's like 2 small paragraphs. Teams did a great job game planning. So he was asked about why he thinks the offense has struggled recently. He said teams did a great job game planning against us, scheming up against us. A lot of times, teams that we just played played defense a little bit differently than what we had seen on film. They just came out with a whole different game plan that we haven't seen them running games. That just comes with us this year being a passing team. Because we became such a heavy passing team, it became easier for teams to try to scheme against us a little bit different. We ran the ball a lot. We didn't have to worry about teams trying to throw out all these weird different coverages that we haven't seen before because they had to figure out how to stop the run. Sometimes we just start passing the ball as heavy as we did. We did a great job doing it as well, but now you got teams that's starting to figure it out. Like, let's just drop eight guys back. Let's do all this different type of stuff that they normally haven't shown on film, and now we got to learn how to adjust. Even in the last 8 games of the season, I thought we did a great job of adjusting. It's just we didn't really know what teams were going to do, and they were able to game plan against us really well with our pass-heavy offense. And we would figure out what we wanted to do on the fly, and I thought we did a great job of it at times. He was kind of shading the play calling a little bit from the OC. Like, I don't know if you noticed, like with him saying, I think he kind of thought the offense got too predictable toward the end of the season with them.
At the beginning of the year, everyone was all aboard the let Russ cook train. And I think it kind of came and bit him in the ass a little bit here because the Seahawks were so good because they pounded the rock, and then Russell Wilson obviously has the ability to beat you deep. And that's what they did. They drew everybody up, and they opened up the offense because everyone had to be ready to stop the run. And they kind of got away from that this year. And it looked good in the first half of the year when no one was really expecting that from the Seahawks and Pete Carroll. And then they're like, all right, well, if you're just going to run DK Metcalf deep on, 50% of plays, like, we'll stop that. That's fine. They figured them out. And I agree. I don't think the offensive coordinator did enough to adapt to the new looks that they were seeing in the second half of the year. They just tried to run the same shit into it, and that's not going to work.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of similar to. I guess I agree. Like what happened with Lamar and whatnot, and what he said about Greg Roman and foreseeing plays. Like defenses kind of knew what was going on. I guess a switch up at OC couldn't really hurt. But I don't know, guys. So sometimes the Seahawks just get into a rut. Like we've seen it happen before. I don't know if we've seen one this bad where it's been half a season essentially where they've kind of been struggling to produce offensively. But I think they'll be able to right the ship kind of in a similar vein. This isn't my highlight, but did you guys see with Tua too? There was some anonymous players kind of throwing him under the bus where they said, they were saying quotes along the lines of, he's got good accuracy, but we're not really seeing it with arm velocity and all this other stuff. And another one of their players was he's not Josh Allen, he's not Mahomes, he's not Lamar, he's not Deshaun, and those are the guys we got beat, aren't they? It's gonna be tough with Tua, which is just not a great sign if you your own players are speaking out, obviously without a name attached to it. So it's kind of but players speaking out against their supposed franchise quarterback 1 year in is not a good look for an organization.
Nah, fuck those players. This is the most dick thing you could do. All right, he's not Patrick Mahomes. Yeah, you're not Aaron Donald. Shut the fuck up.
That's fair.
That's fair. No, I thought that last part was kind of unfair to Tua, but I do think it's interesting. I think it's definitely kind of become clear. This is a quick side tangent on the Tua Dolphins thing, but it kind of became clear that those Dolphins players wanted Fitzpatrick in, and I mean I can't fully fault them. I get for the long-term picture playing Tua, but I think last season if Fitzpatrick's starting all of those games, they make into the postseason. That's my opinion. I don't think they would have lost that Denver game. In any game that Tua won, I think Fitzpatrick would have won also. So it's gonna be interesting. They have the number 3 pick. We've talked a little bit here and there about them possibly taking a QB. So that's gonna be one of the more fascinating storylines of the offseason. Now, my comments on going back to what we were talking about Seattle. I'm not panic selling. I do still stand by. I think Lockett is a good sell, but I said that, or we have all been saying that for a while, literally for weeks. We've been saying that. As for now with those guys, yeah, I'm not panic selling. DK Metcalf's the stud. Russell Wilson is still a top QB. But I wouldn't be surprised next year if they do run it a little bit more. Their highest rusher this year was Chris Carson with 681 yards, and second highest was Russell Wilson with 513. It's pretty unimpressive. So I think they might want to keep defenses honest, and I think it's something where you do want to pay attention to who they end up hiring as their OC, because Pete Carroll isn't going to be. He's not one of those head coaches that calls the offense and calls the plays for the offense. He'll leave that up to the OC. So I'm interested to see who they hire, but everyone besides Lockett, I don't know if I'm going to sell yet. And obviously Chris Carson, which I don't even know if he's going to be on the team next year.
Yeah.
Fair enough. So, JT, what do you got from last week?
Yeah. So Frank might want to like close his laptop or something because it's going to be about his Steelers and the playoff game that happened, the monstrosity.
Monstrosity.
The Steelers lost to the Browns, who did not have Kevin Stefanski in at head coach. He was coaching from his basement or wherever the hell he was. So they lost to the Browns 48-37. I mean, they tried coming back in the second half. It got close at one point, but man, that was a tough way to end the Steelers' season. And my thing is, this could potentially be the end of the Steelers as we know it, because we've got a few guys. You got Juju, who is prime to be a free agent. Same with James Conner, and not only them two, but also the franchise quarterback, the guy who's been there the entire time, Ben Roethlisberger, who's in question. Personally, I do think Ben comes back. I almost certainly don't think Juju will be back. And then James Conner, like maybe, but I just don't think he keeps the same role that he had as like the main running back. Now they fired who they fire? Their OC?
Randy Finkner.
All right. Yeah, thank you, Frank. Chiming in.
Finkner
and then also,
the Sphincter.
Oh.
Also, what's his name? It's almost like Tom Brady, Tom Bradley. And one other coach, I think. They got rid of three coaches. They're like, see ya. I just think it's a new era of the Steelers that we're about to see, and something that I don't know, like what the future holds. Like, it's weird to see what's going on with their wide receiver core. You got Juju saying before the game, like, oh, they're the Browns. Like, we don't worry about the Browns, and then they get beat. And then,
Claypool is still talking.
Yeah, he got Chase Claypool like, oh, I'm just mad because they were being mean after we lost. Like, they're gonna lose next week anyway. like what are we doing? Like, this is not the Steelers that we know. Like, this is not the James Harrison, Hines Ward Steelers, like Troy Polamalu kind of Steelers. It's a very different team. And I'm kind of worried about. I think they might go the way of the Patriots, where they had a long-running dynasty, and now they're going to be in limbo for a little bit, and they're going to have to retool and rebuild, and that means the dynasty players on that team are like who you have on your dynasty, you might take a hit. Namely, Deontay Johnson is the one that I'm kind of concerned about, because especially when you look at the playoff game, right? No one's ever really said the Browns were a strong defensive team. You know, they've let up a lot of points against them. We see them struggle against like the Ravens in the primetime game. Like, they just couldn't stop the Ravens offense at all. We saw the Steelers almost bow back. I mean, I know their defensive line's really good, but other than that, it's just eh. And with that, like Deontay Johnson, I don't love what's going on with his stat lines recently and what's like all the plays. Like, he had 16 targets for 11 receptions and 117 yards, no touchdowns. He's just like, there's just not a lot of efficiency in Deontay Johnson, which has me worried about his future. Like, he gets a lot of targets and he's able to get a fancy relevant games that way, but he's not going to make those flashy plays like you see Claypool and, you know, Juju used to make, and, you know, even Antonio Brown back then. So yeah, I'm worried about the Steelers. I think one of you guys has a sell on one of them. So maybe we won't delve too deep into that. But are you guys worried about the Steelers too?
Yeah. That's all I'm going to say on it is, yes, I'll get into it later. In my buy low, sell high, or not buy low, sell high, but off-season buy sell. So yeah, I am worried.
I'll make this quick. I think their direction as a franchise, I do agree. I could see it heading down kind of what the Patriots did this season. I think they got one more year because Ben Roethlisberger looks like he's going to return for one more season. And the problem is with him returning for one more season, I don't think they'll be Super Bowl champions or anything, but they won't be at the top of the draft where they can get one of those elite QBs in a draft class. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. By the way, all I'm saying is Mason Rudolph starting against the Browns at Cleveland was a closer game than that playoff game. But and I'm not a Mason Rudolph defender. He's pretty trash too. But with Deontay Johnson, I wouldn't be like I understand the concerns, and I wouldn't blame anyone for being concerned. But I'm not ready to say I'm worried about Deontay Johnson yet.
Well, my issue with Deontay though is like people have him in the tier of like Terry McLaurin, DJ Chark, DJ Moore kind of range, and I just think like all those other guys like they have like a wide.
Are you taking DJ? Like if you could, I know you own DJ Chark right now, but say you didn't.
Mm-hmm.
If you could get either Deontay Johnson or DJ Chark for free, are you taking DJ Chark?
Yeah, especially now with Trevor Lawrence.
With Trevor,
yeah, because especially like this year was a down year. I mean, I'm gonna turn into a DJ Chark defender because I do own him. That's my disclaimer. This year was a disappointing year. He had injuries. Quarterback situation was rough, but I mean, his play also wasn't what it was 2 years ago because he didn't have good quarterback 2 years ago either. But DJ Chark showed that he could be like a alpha wide receiver kind of player, one that in a perfect world, in a perfect setting, could be a wide receiver one. Do I think he's going to be that? No, but he's got that kind of ability where I just don't see that in Deontay Johnson. Like in Terry McLaurin and DJ Moore are other players that are in that same kind of tier that I just want over them. Especially if Terry McLaurin can get some semblance of a quarterback, any quarterback, just get Terry McLaurin, someone. But yeah, that's why I think personally.
I guess I'm irrationally high on Deontay Johnson. Maybe not irrationally. I do want to get Frank's thoughts on it once I'm speaking real quick, but I'm still, I don't know. I'm still, I understand every point you made. And DJ Chark with Trevor Lawrence, that's a huge boost for him. He's going to be a nice receiver next year. I just really like Deontay Johnson. I think the only problems he had was occasionally he had some drop issues, which I think that's just kind of like some mental lapses, which I think he can fix. We saw Aguilar fix that. Like Aguilar was the type of receiver where his route running and his athletic ability was good. That's the thing I was always frustrating as an Eagles fan because he's fast and he would get open, but he would just drop the ball. And now I guess through an offseason of work, he was kind of able to fix those kind of mental lapses and have a successful season with the Raiders. I think Deontay Johnson, he gets open all the time, and I think he had some drop issues, which I think are very fixable because, like I said, he's getting open. He's an explosive player. So I still really like him. Between him and DJ Chark, it's close. I might lean Deontay. I think I lean Deontay. I put Terry McLaurin over both. Him and DJ Moore are really close to me. Like I know people like DJ Moore a lot more, but I don't know. I'm really high on Deontay Johnson. And even in the playoff game where people say he didn't play well, still, what was his final stats? It was 11 catches for 11 for 117. Like that's still.
Yeah. Ben also threw the ball almost 70 times though. He literally threw the ball 60
times. 500 yards.
Yeah, like you're not going to see that in a normal game.
Yeah, but no, also part of why I like Deontay is because I think Juju leaves in free agency. I think Deontay does get a decent amount of those catches. So I understand that. Juju, I have no idea what to think. It's so hard to tone out because I have no idea what team he's going to end up on. Like there hasn't really been rumors with him. I'm sure teams will throw in the bag. I'm sure like teams like the Jets and stuff will throw in the bag, but. It's hard to tell. Steelers as a franchise, I agree with you, but I still love Deontay and Claypool.
All right, I got some things to say real quick before we move off the Steelers.
No,
First thing I'll say, In regards to Deontay and his dynasty value, I actually agree with JT. I love Deontay coming out. He was one of my favorite receivers, but I don't really know what we've seen to make him a consensus like top 24 receiver necessarily.
I gotta trade
And
you.
this is one of the people that absolutely I targeted Deontay in almost every league when he was coming out, and I'm not selling him. But I don't know what we've seen to make him over Terry McLaurin. I think that's just a bit absurd. And this is coming from someone that really likes him. Now, the thing with the Steelers offense that I find very interesting, and I think you guys aren't taking into account in terms of the efficiency numbers, is that this offense is different from every other offense in the league. Just we have not seen this type of short passing game be this on the forefront of offenses in a while. And it's almost like they would refuse to throw the ball deep because they didn't want Ben to get hit and they didn't believe in the offensive line, to the point where they only used the short passing game. And it got so one-dimensional. I feel like that's why the Steelers started shutting down, is that teams saw what the Washington football team was able to do and just almost decided, hey, we're not even going to rush the passer. We're just going to use our defensive line to bat balls down. And that kind of just screwed the Steelers' mojo. But I think we're going to see a big change, especially more towards a run-oriented attack now with Finger gone and a couple other coaches gone. I think that that's the direction that they're going to choose to go with the offense.
How do you think they bring back Connor to be a part of that run-oriented offense if he takes, a team-friendly, I don't know, 2-year deal, something along those lines?
It's hard to see us bringing back very many offensive free agents right now, to be completely honest. I want us to bring back Juju, even though he's, we have all the noise and all that. I think he's much more valuable than James Conner. James Conner, he's just a little bit too inconsistent. I don't see how we've drafted running backs 3 years in a row. I think we're drafting 4 years in a row the running back position, and that's going to be at the expense of James Conner.
Fair enough. I probably agree with you. I just wanted to see, coming from a Steeler fan, you follow the team a little more than I think all of us. So just wanted to hear what you had to say on that one.
Just realistically, like, if you're a GM, are you re-signing James Conner from what you've seen thus far?
I mean, like you said, if he took some very friendly 2-year deal, like if he took a 2-year, $6 million, like I think they would re-sign him.
Yeah, I can agree with you there. He's in this weird limbo between he's good, but he's wildly inconsistent. And on top of all of that, the real problem with this football team, I think, is the offensive line.
I think the offensive line is just aging and injured a little bit. So I agree with you there. And I think to get back to the Steeler football that we're used to, they really need to shore up that offensive line to start with.
All right.
Frank, I need to trade you for Deontay Johnson. I guess I'm not putting him ahead of Terry McLaurin, but I guess I don't know. I'm still super high on him. But yeah, that was the last thing I want to say. I still like him a lot, but I do agree with you. I do think the O-line is an issue in Pittsburgh, but I don't know. I trust Mike Tomlin. I think he'll have a good draft, and it'll be interesting to see how free agency plays out.
So moving forward for JT's second highlight of the week, it kind of goes hand in hand with Lounis's, I guess you'd call it hot take here. I don't know how hot we're calling it, but JT, what do you got?
Yeah, so kind of a separate thing. We never really cover college games in our dynasty, but now that the regular season for NFL is over, we gotta start looking forward to the rookie draft and like who we're gonna get in the rookie draft. And someone that's been flying up boards recently, he stayed for his senior year, which is kind of a negative for me, but he's shown what he could do with production. It's Devonta Smith. He had essentially a half because they took him out because he hurt his finger or whatever happened to him. Devonta Smith had 12 receptions for 215 yards and 3 touchdowns, which is just insane. Like, that's just so much production for a wide receiver in a game as huge as the national championship. The Crimson Tide just destroyed the Buckeyes 52-24. It was tough. There were some nice parts of Justin Fields. He kind of showed off his running ability a little bit against what is mostly NFL players, like future NFL players in the Alabama defense. But yeah, the real storyline of this, obviously Devonta Smith, just great game. The only other thing I'll add on this is I'm lower on Mac Jones than consensus. I don't think he can do what most other NFL quarterbacks can do. I think he's only going to be a game manager, if that, in the NFL. But yeah, that's basically my highlight. Lounis has a similar highlight, just kind of on the opposite side. What's your highlight, Lounis?
So, well, first off, I agree with you on Mac Jones. He's my QB6.
So behind,
okay.
Trask is your 5.
Trask.
Yeah, Trask is 5.
Yeah.
That's fine. Go on.
Yeah.
So my QB6, I don't care if y'all put the clown mask on me, put it on. I encourage it. I'm not scared of it. Standing by my take. And I know my co-podcasters agree with me secretly, even though they're too scared to admit it. And we'll see it come to fruition next season. But Devonta Smith is as great as the season as he's had. He had a phenomenal season, one of the best of all time as a college receiver. He's my wide receiver 3 for this upcoming draft. And I would not draft him in the top, definitely not the top 12 or 13. In real life NFL draft, I wouldn't draft him in the top 13. Probably somewhere in the later teens. He's my wide receiver 3. Ja'Marr Chase.
I mean,
what were you gonna say, JT?
Well, when you say like that part, I don't necessarily disagree with, just because when you think about last year, Henry Ruggs was the first one to go off the board, and that was what he go to the Raiders, 10, 12?
12.
Yeah. So it's not that high.
Yeah, but I'm just saying from what I've seen mocked, people have been saying even at 3.
Yeah, 3's kind of crazy to me too.
Yeah, and then I've seen people saying 6 to Philadelphia, or just somewhere in that top 10. I'm not drafting him in the top 13, probably later in the teens, maybe 17, 18, with Waddle and Chase ahead of him. So in case you guys are wondering, Waddle was my wide receiver 2. Chase is 2 years younger than Devonta Smith. We're comparing his sophomore season to Devonta's senior season. There's a reason Devonta Smith stayed. We saw Ja'Marr Chase put up insane number, and you got to realize as good as Justin Jefferson was, he was still easily the number 2 to Ja'Marr Chase. It wasn't even like a 1A, 1B situation. Ja'Marr Chase was the best receiver on that offense.
And look what Jefferson did this year as a rookie in the NFL.
That's
just
what
shows
I'm saying.
how good Ja'Marr Chase is.
Exactly. So I think Ja'Marr Chase is just he's just built different. He is insane. Now, I guess the more controversial part is Waddle versus Devonta Smith, because I feel like Waddle has been kind of, I'll say, a majority of people the wide receiver 3 behind either Chase or Devonta at 2. I think Devonta is overall a better athlete. I think he is more explosive. People forget, because this usually happens when someone gets injured for last season before they enter the draft. There's a whole ton of recency bias, but entering this season and before both of them got hurt, I know not everyone feels this way, but especially Frank. I know.
Wait,
Frank
did you mean that Waddle is the better athlete or Devonta?
Waddle's the better athlete.
Okay, just wanted to clarify that really quickly.
Yeah, no, my bad if I misworded it. Waddle is the better athlete. And credits to Frank. Okay, so Frank, before this season, has been on the Devonta Smith train for a while. He has been a huge Devonta Smith fan, so I'll give him credit for that. He was saying he's a stud for a while, and he had an amazing season. For me, before the season and up until Waddle got hurt, I had always thought they were close, but Waddle edges him out by a little bit just because of his explosiveness and what he can do with the ball in his hands. And I'm so excited to see them in the NFL. And I wouldn't even be surprised if by the time the draft comes, once the combine comes and Waddle has a better combine than Devonta Smith, and we'll see what happens at the pro days, that Devonta Smith kind of falls to that wide receiver 3. I don't know how the draft is exactly going to go, but I'm just saying I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. And my prediction right now for the NFL is that, again, this isn't to say Smith is going to be bad. Smith is going to be the NFL level. This is an insanely good wide receiver class. He's going to be a stud. I'm just saying I think the two people I have above him are a little bit better. That's the case I'm making.
The only thing I need to add here is that for anybody curious, there's a video out there of Henry Ruggs and Jalen Waddle in a race after practice one day from last year. I'm just gonna say go watch it because you're not gonna like who won. It was Waddle. So just be prepared for the combine. This kid's gonna show out.
Are we sure there's going to be a combine? Like, is that definite right now?
It is not.
I think
Yeah, that's what I'm worried about.
I don't think it's definite, but I think some kind of testing thing will happen. They might stretch it out where it's multiple days and they bring in a less amount of people per day, and there'll be a whole bunch of precautions. Like everyone who's not a player will be wearing masks. There'll be less people there. They'll limit the number of people each team can send, but I think it'll still happen in some form.
I think what's
don't know if it'll be the exact same way as before, but it'll happen in some form, in my opinion.
I think what's more likely is we might just get like each team has their own pro day, like college team. And it's going to be very tough for is Lounis with us? It's going to be very tough for teams to decide like what's real and what's not when you get these pro day stats. Like it might come out that Waddle runs like a 4.28 at the pro day, and it's like, can we believe what's going on here? Like, how do we know? So yeah.
I'm just kind of worried that you might not even get that. It might just be videos of pro days and not even like being able to attend, which that would just be a draft nightmare. You'd have people falling, people rising, just nothing good. It would be the Wild West in this draft if they could just only see videos of pro days. That would be insane. But hey, that's what happens in the COVID 2021 or whatever year it is now.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So
Looks like we lost Lounis for now, but I think that's just God smiting him due to his bad takes.
yeah. So there's it's starting to become a more and more popular theme, like people starting to clamor about Devonta Smith not being as good as people believe he is. I don't necessarily disagree. But all right, so I guess we'll just move on. Lounis's next highlight, we'll just hit it. He seems to be having connectivity issues. If you're on YouTube, you obviously can see this high. If you're on the podcast, we're just gonna roll without him for right now. And his is, what do the Bears do next at quarterback? Because there was a stat that was out that Mitch Trubisky was playing low. Like the Bears were winning when Mitch Trubisky started, and they weren't when
They were.
So
yeah, they were.
I don't necessarily know if that was Lounis's take. I don't think Lounis would be the type. I know Lounis. I don't think he'd be the type to advocate for Mitch Trubisky. Maybe he's trying to bait you into that.
I can step in for Lounis really quickly. Oh, geez.
Okay. You want to give us a Lounis impression?
Yeah, guys, I don't know what the Bears are going to do at quarterback. I really think it would be a good move for them to trade for Deshaun Watson or to trade up.
I came back and I heard that. I see how the vibes were in the 2 minutes.
We moved on to your highlight.
I stepped in for you, Lounis. Don't worry. Just take it off.
I appreciate you subbing in. So, so I don't know what the Bears are going to do at quarterback. So the Bears have an interesting QB situation heading into this offseason. They're not at the top of the draft. I don't know what their exact draft. Do you guys know what their exact draft pick is around? Maybe like 19.
No, 19 is Washington
right.
football team.
They're right around there. Because they just got
I believe.
bounced in the.
I believe they're 20.
20.
Yeah.
So you're not going to get one of those top 4 guys between Lawrence, Fields, Wilson and Lance, do you take a little bit of a reach on? Well, I don't know if it'd be a reach because if it ends up being your QB, it's not a reach. But do you try to go for maybe a Mac Jones or Trask? Maybe trade back and pick one of them. Do you roll with Trubisky for another season? He's going to be a free agent this offseason, so you're going to have to. I don't even know what his contract would look like. I have zero idea what his contract would potentially look like because he was terrible for a while. He had a pretty decent ending to the season and then a bad playoff game. But at the end of the season, he was playing okay. So they have Nick Foles is the only QB they have under contract for next season, and I think it's an interesting QB storyline that isn't really talked about much. But I have no idea who's going to be their guy next year or their plan moving forward. They just announced that they're keeping their same GM and coach. Some Bears fans kind of disliked it. I think I don't know about their GM, but I think their coach Ryan Nagy. I think he's a decent coach. Matt Nagy, yeah. I think he's a decent coach. I think definitely he needs to hire a new OC, but I think he can be an all right coach. Like we saw what he did 2 years ago and how good that team was when they went 12-4. And I wanted to get your guys' opinion on how you guys think this plays out.
So really quickly, before you guys start, I just want to say that if the Bears traded their first round pick next year, and their second round selection this year as well, they could easily trade into the top 10. They'd be probably in terms of value at like 7 to 5, somewhere around there, possibly even higher.
Trading up is also definitely an option. I agree with you, Frank. And that'd be the type of package that would make it work. If they wanted to get maybe like a Trey Lance or something.
See, I don't think I don't see them trading up. I just think they're more likely to try to trade for an established player. Whether that's Carson Wentz, whether that's even a huge move for Deshaun Watson, redo on that Mitch Trubisky pick right there. If it's Matt Stafford being cut by the Lions, if it's I don't know. There's a lot.
Matt Ryan even.
Yeah. Matt Ryan. That's where I was going next. There's so many established QBs. That's where I see the Bears going because that defense is pretty decent. It's not as good as it was 2 years ago, but it's still a good team. It still has Khalil Mack. It still has Jalen Johnson coming back off injury. So that defense is legit. You add a real quarterback there, and not one of these Mitch Trubisky's, Nick Foles types. I think that if David Montgomery can keep up what he did at the end of the year, if they re-sign A-Rob or get another wide receiver either in the draft or free agency, I think this Bears team could be good. I just think they're really missing a quarterback, and I think they'd rather get someone established than try to risk it all again for a high upside Trey Lance pick here.
I think so. From a different angle, I think what they have to do, and they're not going to do it because ownership came out and they had a press conference. I think it was yesterday, maybe 2 days ago, a couple days ago when you're listening to the podcast. But the McCaskies, I think, are the ownership. They said they're sticking with Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy, and I don't think that's the right decision. The Bears have only had like one winning season in the past 8 years. Like it's something crazy like that. They've only won once in a long time. Not only that, but you're gonna keep Ryan Pace as the GM, the guy who drafted Mitch Trubisky over Deshaun Watson because he drove a beat up car kind of scenario, which is just crazy to me.
And Mahomes.
And Matt Nagy was brought in to be an offensive coach. Like he was supposed to be the offensive coach. And Lewis mentioned it earlier. He thinks that he needs to get an offensive coordinator. I just think they need a new coach in general. Like Matt Nagy is just not getting it done. I get it. They want continuity. That was their whole propaganda kind of speech in their press conference. They want to keep the team together because they've had that revolving door of what was it, Tressel, whatever his name was, and John Fox, and now we're on to Nagy. It's just, I think you just need to overhaul the whole team because they're just stuck in purgatory. they're just always that middling team that they have that struggling quarterback play. And I just think if they go out and get a veteran, whatever veteran it is, he's going to be doomed to that same fate. And if they draft the third or the fourth best quarterback in this draft and even trade up for him, he's probably just going to be that middling guy. Like until they like overhaul this franchise, I think they're just doomed to be that 7 to 9 to 9 to 7 team. And they might as well just hire Jeff Fisher if that's the case and just run with it like that. Because it's just that's their culture. Their culture is to just be average. That was my little Bears rant. I'm not a Bears fan, but
You had a lot of good points.
Thanks.
You're sounding like Big Cat out here, just bashing the Bears.
I
If I was a Bears fan, I'd be
yeah,
bashing
I
the Bears.
haven't listened to Big Pat Cat recently about the Bears, but like I have to imagine that's probably Chicago's sentiment. Like you're just like you're stuck with the same thing over and over again. Like continuity of being average. Like you don't want that. Like no NFL fan just wants to like, oh, here we go again. We're going 8-8 this year. Can't wait. Like maybe we'll win some close games. Maybe we'll lose some close games. Just go out there and have fun, team. Like what are we doing? What are we doing? And it's frustrating too.
Fun to fun, JT. That's all that matters.
And tying it back to like the dynasty perspective, right? It's frustrating to have any of these players because it's just like they're also like all like Allen Robinson could be a great receiver. There was a stat that came out from Pro Football Focus that he was like the 9th highest in least catchable balls like thrown to him percentage wise, which is it's just so frustrating because Allen Robinson is, despite this, like a wide receiver 1. Typically, he's typically a wide receiver 1, and it's just so frustrating to see. I can't buy. I don't like going out and buying Bears players because I know they're just going to be stuck in this mediocrity. But if you're a Bears fan, at least you're not the Lions.
At least you're not Detroit.
You have a divisional rival who's even worse in that regard. So
I was told from average ADP that the Lions have a generational running back.
we could get into that in a minute. I'll
All right, so we're just gonna move on. We're gonna go into a pretty similar segment to what we've been doing the past couple weeks, but instead of trending up, trending down, we're gonna do our off-season buy and sell. So this is just gonna be a segment about guys that maybe didn't have the best year and we want to buy. Maybe you think they're gonna continue to get better and you want to buy. Versus guys that we think are rated too high right now or just are abandoning ship overall. So I'll kick it off with my buy. My buy is Michael Gallup. He did not have such a good year, albeit his quarterbacks of Ben DiNucci and Andy Dalton aren't great, but he still managed to have, I think it was around 600 yards and about 6 touchdowns. I can pull up the exact stats. But, yeah, he ended up with, 500 yards, or 800 yards, 850 yards on 59 receptions and 5 touchdowns. So he ended up not having a bad year, despite the QB play and despite the Cowboys taking CeeDee Lamb in the first round last year and Amari Cooper being on the roster. This Cowboys offense just completely underperformed, obviously, once Dak got hurt. And moving forward with assuming they re-sign Dak, I just think this offense goes back to what we saw in the first 5 weeks of the year before the Dak injury, but definitely takes a big step back in the right direction. And on top of that, Michael Gallup, he had 1,000 yards last year prior to the Cowboys drafting CeeDee Lamb. He is a free agent following the 2021 season. I think he has so much upside. He is a young player, and someone is going to sign him to be their, wide receiver 2. Maybe a bad team, he'll be the wide receiver 1. I just think there's so much potential in Michael Gallup that it is worth anything, not anything, but the low price that you'd have to pay for him at this.
Yeah. So my issue is, are you concerned about the Cowboys, what they might do with this offseason in regards to going out and getting another wide receiver, or maybe drafting the Kyle Pitts type and everything, and just the ball even being spread around more on offense?
I mean,
Dallas
listen,
Jackson Dallas would be such a Jerry Jones move.
I've seen a lot of mocks that have Kyle Pitts going to the Cowboys at pick 10. That would clearly spread the ball out even thinner, and that would be an issue. Um, it would be like the most Jerry Jones pick if like Jalen Waddle or like Jamar Chase or whoever was like the number one receiver on his board was still there at pick 10, and he was like, you know what, I'm gonna take him just because that's basically what he did last year with CeeDee Lamb. But I don't think that'll happen. I think Pitts to fill that tight end hole that's been pretty much barren since like Jason Witten left years ago and then came back and then left again. I don't know that their tight end position's been not great in the past few years, but I don't know. I'm a little concerned, but the other thing is here is that he is a free agent after the 2021 season, which is very important because if that team does get spread even thinner with the addition of another offensive weapon, there's no way they're going to be able to pay him. He's a guy that's already had 1,000-yard receiving season. He had 800 yards this year with a horrible quarterback situation. He's a good receiver. People know it, and people are going to pay him, and the Cowboys just are not going to have the cap.
I actually agree with you, and I can't get too into it because part of that Cowboys receiving core I'm going to bring up later in one of my trending up, trending down players. But Michael Gallup is an extremely talented receiver that I think anyone who buys him right now, you're buying low on him in terms of long term. We saw, like Jake mentioned last year. Last year, I think as a 23-year-old, he had 1,100 yards, and that was with missing like 2 or 3 games too. I don't know what happens to Dallas. I don't know if, as I mentioned, they get rid of Cooper, which again I will get into Cooper later, or if he ends up on a different team after this season. But I think now is the time to buy him because if he is going to leave, not this offseason, but next offseason, his value will already be way up by next offseason because everyone's already going to be talking like, oh, buy him before he signs with the team. If you want to play some 4D chess here, buying him now is kind of the move. And if you do have him, I think he's a hold. Just because he's insanely talented. He still managed to put up 800 yards this year with Dak getting hurt and Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb both balling out also. I'm with you, Jake. I'm a huge Michael Gallup fan for fantasy.
What do you think the price tag is currently on Michael Gallup?
I think it's still pretty high just because he is so young. I don't think it's a first, but I do think it's at least probably 2 seconds. Just because people have seen what he can do. But 2 seconds in this draft is a lot. We're gonna get into it, not this episode, but in the coming few episodes this offseason of how deep this draft is and how good these draft prospects are. So 2 seconds in this draft class is a lot, but I think Michael Gallup is just a guy that's worth it.
Yeah, I was going to say I have him probably, if I had to say one pick specifically, an extremely early second. I don't know if I can go late first yet, but a very early second. How do you feel, JT?
That's about where I don't know. I get he's got the talent, but like we said, there is a lot of talented wide receivers coming out this year. So
There are.
And I'm sure some of them will end up in better situations than the third wide receiver competing with targets.
It's kind of how yeah, I was gonna say it's kind of how you would compare him to like a Bateman, a Rondell Moore, Kadarius Toney. It's kind of like how would you rank him compared to those guys coming in as rookies?
Yeah.
Because those are guys I expect to go top of the second.
So I guess I'd give up a mid-second, but yeah, I don't know. It's tough, but right around there, I guess. Who is your sells, Jake / sell?
My sells, I have two. They're both a little hot here, a little spicy takes.
Yes.
Pretty spicy.
Pretty spicy. My first one is DeAndre Swift, and I know JT, you love him. You
I'm gonna get on my
love,
soapbox.
you love
It's
your
JT's
DeAndre
child.
Swift,
You
too.
go ahead, Frank. I don't know how good you are with
So watch him out.
Photoshop, but get me like preaching in the back.
If you reach over one of those video
Get me
boxes
like
and
ready
choke it.
to give us. Go ahead, Jake. Give it to me.
All right. I'm just going to start by saying I like DeAndre Swift. I think he's a very good player. I had him as my number 2 running back coming into the draft last year. He had a good rookie season, not great. He started to come on at the end of the season, especially receiving. The reason I have him as a sell right now is because where people in the Dynasty community are ranking him right now. Right now, people have him. I think we saw him as high as like running back like 5. Was that like as high as we saw him around there? Which to me is ridiculous. Like, yes, he's a very good back. Showed a lot of promise, but he's realistically had about 2, 3 good NFL games. So to me, it's just really hard to get behind that. And if you could get him, or sell him off for what people are buying him for right now, like, multiple first-round picks and a good young player, I just don't see how you could possibly turn that down for a guy that's had, like I said, 2, 3 good games in the NFL.
Soapbox time. So where I gotta disagree with you is, yes, he hasn't had many good games, but when he gets over 10 carries, he averages over 20 points per game. When he gets over 10 carries, which is what you want from
Which happened
your
what?
five
Twice?
times. 5 times. 5 times he's gotten over 10 carries.
And he put up 20 points. Didn't he have like one game where he had like 36 or 7 points or something like that? That's gonna bloat the entire numbers there.
His highest game was 26 against Jacksonville in half-point PPR.
Okay.
Yeah. Denied. So that's step 1. Step 2, he's one of the top pass-catching running backs in the league. Like, you've got Christian McCaffrey, you've got Alvin Kamara. Then I think it's DeAndre Swift. I mean, maybe you could make the argument that
I agree. Listen.
Okay.
Aaron Jones.
Listen,
Aaron Jones.
when we set our running back rankings earlier in the show, I had him right behind Taylor as the number 2 rookie running back, and I agree with that. But I don't agree with the overall. He's running back 5 or running back 6, whatever people have him at right now.
So where do you have? Where do you have him?
I have him closer to 10, which obviously isn't that far off. I understand that, and I probably have him maybe even a little outside 10 in that Akers range, similar type of a player.
Well, if you have him,
JT, as a DeAndre Swift owner, if someone's coming to you and offering you straight up Nick Chubb for Swift, you're declining it.
It's a tough one, but personally, yeah, I am. I know I don't even know if the majority is. I think they're close right there.
I guess the majority's on your side right now. Those are the ADPs.
Nick Chubb as a whole is criminally underrated.
I agree, but a lot of that has to do with there is Kareem Hunt there. A lot of that has to do with you do have Kareem Hunt.
That doesn't matter. Look at what he's done even with Kareem Hunt there. When they both play, they both put up numbers. It's ridiculous. It's crazy.
I get that, but it is question like DeAndre Swift. It's his backfield. Like there's no question about it.
He split it all year with Adrian Peterson.
He didn't split it. When he at the start of the season, he wasn't getting a lot of carries, right? Then he was out for a little bit due to a concussion, and that's when Peterson really had most of his carries. And then after that, it was DeAndre Swift's backfield. I mean, sometimes they had Adrian Peterson.
And like you said, he still hasn't got over 10 carries. It's not even a lot of carries.
He's gone over 10 carries. He got over 10 carries 5 games at the end of the season.
Yeah, only in 5 games. That's what I'm saying. Like, it's not a lot of carries. It's not like last week, Cam Akers had 28 carries in a playoff game. That's what I want to see. I want to see him get 28 carries, and produce with that. Not, he had 10 carries and he averaged 6 yards a carry on 10 carries because he broke one for 30 yards. Great, we got it. He can make big plays, and he's a good pass catching back, and he's a good player. He's a very good player. I'm not downing DeAndre Swift. I'm just saying at his current value, it's a sell for me because you can get so much for him right now, and I just think that's a move.
So where I gotta disagree with you on this is, I get like he was only had 10 carries, over 10 carries, 5 games. Most of those games were the end of the year, but he had 120 carries almost on the season. He had 115 on the season. Nick Chubb had 190. I get Nick Chubb was out a couple games. So was DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift also didn't really do a whole lot in his first few games. So the disparity between the two isn't that great. You can only expect him to get more carries. Like, how is he getting less carries from here? This seems to be his floor as far as carries are concerned, unless he does get injured. But that's, if we're starting to predict injuries for running backs, it gets a little too difficult. Where it does also get positive for DeAndre Swift is the Lions' offense under Matt Patricia, was completely different than the Lions' offense under Bevel. And now you're going to go out and you're going to get a different coach who's probably going to be way better than Bevel too. You just have to assume that. You have to. We're not dealing in absolutes here, but these guys weren't.
That's a safe assumption.
Yeah, these guys weren't.
Hold on. Let me jump in here because I've heard enough of this. So I'm definitely more on Jake's side. I was never a huge DeAndre Swift guy coming into the league.
On him.
I'll put the clown mask on myself. You can't see it, but I'll put it on for this. So first things first.
Put it on JT.
No. I'm not clowning. I'm clowning you, if anything, not JT.
Mine's I'm kind of with consensus here.
Yeah, the consensus is that DeAndre Swift is pretty top back. So here's my thing, right? The first reason why I think you should sell DeAndre Swift is that most of the other rookie running backs outproduced him. Clyde Edwards-Helaire did, Jonathan Taylor did, Dobbins did, James Robinson did. I'm pretty sure even Gibson did. And yes, I understand, there was injuries, but that kind of crap, it's just, how am I supposed to say a guy that didn't even have 1,000 all-purpose yards is a top 6, top 10 running back easily? First off. Second off, in terms of coaching improving under Darrell Bevell, I'm not sure you guys remember, but Darrell Bevell was the coach under Adrian Peterson when he pretty much became a Hall of Famer. He was the coach with the Seahawks under Marshawn Lynch when they were winning Super Bowls. I don't think we can assume that the coaching is going to get better for this team, especially for the running back position, given Darrell Bevell's history.
Yeah, but that's also why Adrian Peterson was getting those carries near the end of the year too. DeAndre Swift easily had the least amount of touches out of those guys. He didn't have the same kind of. James Robinson had 98% usage rate for the Jaguars. If you're going to give DeAndre Swift that amount of touches and that amount of usage, he's going to do well. He's going to score numbers. It's just, math. You give someone more carries and more opportunities, he's going to score more points. I just think, I get it. A lot of people are very high on him. We haven't seen it yet. We haven't seen him do it consistently yet, but he has shown in multiple games that he's capable of giving you those 20-plus point games if you just give him the usage. So all we're looking for is a little bit more usage for DeAndre Swift, and then he is one of those top running backs. And, you probably are going to have, you almost definitely are going to have CMC, probably Kamara, then, questionable, but probably Saquon Barkley and Dalvin Cook. And, we all said Jonathan Taylor was a better running back. But right after that, I have him right in that tier, that next tier. And I think that's where people are valuing him at. So if I'm going to sell him for running back 5 value when I figure out, I figure personally he's running back 8, there's not that much big of a difference. What am I doing with the value that I get going out and trying to draft another running back? If you're saying go out, get 2 more draft picks and a solid player, we all discussed earlier, we thought Cam Akers would be the best running back out of this draft. So if we're getting a draft pick in this draft that's not, a top draft pick, and another one, and random player. I don't know who you guys had in mind. Like, we're not replacing DeAndre Swift at the running back position. We're going to lose out on the running back position if we're trying to replace him through the draft. And that's just not something I feel comfortable doing given this draft class and potentially next year's draft class as well. So that's my thought process on it.
No, that's completely fair. I don't have DeAndre Swift in the top 15 running backs in Dynasty. So that's also my thought process behind it. Yeah, I understand that. Now, see, that's why I said I'll wear the clown face, because I'm the one that's not in consensus right now, but that's just how I feel based off of my analysis, and I don't think I've seen anything to disprove that this season.
Where do you have him among the rookie running backs?
5 or 6. Somewhere around there. I don't understand. Is that really that hot of a take? I'd rather have Jonathan Taylor. I'd rather have Dobbins. I'd probably rather have James Robinson. And I'd rather have Gibson. So 5 or 6. Like, I may rather have Akers. Is that really that ridiculous to say? Like, I feel like the rankings with these rookies are relatively subjective as it is. We've seen 1 year.
It is.
Oh, and I even forgot Edwards-Helaire. Like, I just think we need to stop over. Like, everyone's going to have their preference. We can all agree that Jonathan Taylor had the best year. But, like, I don't think going against consensus for the rookie running backs is the craziest thing right now. Yeah, I think we can see two sides of the coin. I can see DeAndre Swift, like JT is saying, starting to get that 15 carries a game plus a couple of receptions a game, and all of a sudden he's one of the best backs in the NFL in terms of fantasy football. Yeah, that's completely fair. But I can also see DeAndre Swift, his efficiency numbers going way down the more he gets used in the offense, especially if they lose guys like Stafford and Golladay and Marvin Jones, and there's all these new faces coming in, new coordinators. I just don't like the continuity in that organization, especially because it's the place where players go to die.
It's interesting you think that about DeAndre Swift, but you don't think that about James Robinson. That's just like, that's kind of my feeling about James Robinson, really, where it's like...
I think the difference here is that we know where the Jaguars are headed right now. They just hired a coach. We'll get to that later. They have the number 1 pick. We know who's going to be their quarterback for at least the next 5 years, probably longer. They have, Chark and Chenault and Robinson as offensive weapons here. I think they're honestly a team that could turn it around pretty faster than people think. Obviously, that's assuming that Lawrence lives up to all the hype that he's gotten since he was 18, 19 years old as a freshman winning the national championship. So,
no, JT, you're right though. Like, there is that concern with James Robinson, but I think that's more factored into his price tag way more than DeAndre Swift. And I think it's a valid concern for both guys. You're completely right in that. And I think there's a clearly valid argument for having DeAndre Swift higher than James Robinson. I mean, I had Swift higher than Robinson coming into the league. I think everyone and their mother had Swift higher than Robinson coming into the league. So I think that's a completely fair thing to say. And it's definitely, I'm the one out of consensus saying that I would rather have Robinson than Swift.
That's fair. The only other thing that I think about is, so Brad Holmes is now the new GM of the Lions, right? And if I'm not mistaken, I believe Brad Holmes, he was part of the Rams when they drafted Todd Gurley, no? I think he was. I gotta make sure. I'm sorry if I'm just throwing this out there off the cuff. I didn't really think we'd be going that deep into it, but I believe he did. And if he did, we're talking about Georgia running back 2 team. Like, you could start to see where this could be going. I know I'm taking kind of a leap. I'm skipping step B and C and getting to D, where we have DeAndre Swift getting a ton of usage. But I don't think it's that absurd with Brad
Gurley and Swift are completely different backs. They just happen to go to the same school.
I get that they're different backs, but the thought process of we're going to, we've got our our main back, like they've just did this year with Cam Akers. I mean, I know it took a little while for Cam Akers to learn the offense. Granted, they didn't really have a preseason and whatnot. But now you see what you were talking about with Cam Akers, how he's getting all these touches now. I don't think it's ridiculous to assume that they do go that route of we're going to give this guy a lot of touches, especially when you think about like they're not. I don't know what their deal is with Kenny Golladay. I feel like he's more likely gone than staying. Danny Amendola probably gone. Like they're not going to have a lot of receiving options. They're going to basically play through DeAndre Swift and TJ Hawkinson, I feel like. So yeah, I just think the future is up for DeAndre Swift. I guess you guys think it's a cloudier thing. So it's just something we're going to have to agree to disagree on. Who was your other sell?
So my other sell is also a little spicy, just because he had a really good rookie year. It's Chase Claypool. We talked about it a little bit when we talked about the Steelers early on, but this team is heading into like a very transition, Patriots this season-esque mode. Whether that's this season coming up in 2021 or the year after, I think it really depends on Ben, and if he does come back. I don't know if he will. He was like crying after the game. I don't know. He may or may not come back, but we'll see about that. It's Ben. You're not gonna know for a while. He's definitely gonna probably just be like, yeah, I'm gonna see how I feel in a few months and then decide. But Chase Claypool obviously is very highly thought of in the Dynasty community right now, and rightfully so. He had a very good year, shown out to be a very talented receiver. But with Ben and this team potentially heading in the wrong direction, and with a lot of new faces potentially coming in, with James Conner heading out and Juju heading out and maybe Ben heading out, offensive coordinator was fired. This team is going to look a lot different next year, and I just think Claypool might suffer a little bit, especially because if you're either playing with like a 39-year-old Big Ben, or I don't know who they're going to get at quarterback, because they're picking probably around 25 to 26 in the draft, whatever it is down there. So it's just an iffy situation. I think you can get a whole lot for Chase Claypool right now. Similarly to my argument with DeAndre Swift, is that not that I think Claypool's a bad player. I think he's very good, very talented, a guy I'd want on my team. But the value that you can get for him is just so much greater than what I think he will end up being.
Yeah, so I agree in that regard where, I mean, I mentioned at the top of the podcast what I thought about where the Steelers were going. So I agree in that sense. It's also, Lounis had Claypool ranked earlier as wide receiver 15 when we did our wide receiver rankings. I don't know if that's changed for Lounis, but if he's around there, I'm going to sell at that price and just grab what I can. In the interest of time, that's all I really got then.
I understand what you're saying, Jake, and it's a fair argument. I'm not worried too much about his QB situation. We saw week 17 up against the Browns starters. Even with Mason Rudolph, he had a great performance. For me, he just looks like he's just a physical beast of a receiver. I do understand the argument in terms of if people are kind of ranking him almost too high to sell on the hype and get max value for that, even if you do think he's good, you just think he's being rated a little bit too high. See, that's the argument I can understand being made. But I'm personally still a huge Claypool fan.
Fair enough. So we'll move on. JT, who you got with your buy and sell?
Yeah, so someone who's probably off many people's radars right now is someone who he plays for the Colts, has 2 straight years of injuries, Paris Campbell. He's just, what I like about him is he's shown flashes in training camp where he's looked really great from all reports. And you get tons of those reports every year about certain players. The difference about Paris Campbell is we actually saw it in a real game setting. He just happened to get injured again the following game. I really like his potential value for what he is. He's probably got bought for fairly cheap. I don't know. Frank owns him if he wants to talk about what he'd give him up for. But I think he's someone that you could go out, cheap buy. Like, it's very rare that you have trades for players at this kind of value, just because like normally the owner who really believes in them the most is the one who has them. But if you go and get out Paris Campbell on your team, I think it's a good flyer buy. I think Phillip Rivers will be back this year. It sounds like the Colts were willing to have him back if he was willing to come back. So it's kind of like a wait and see kind of thing. I guess he'll evaluate his options. But Phillip Rivers likes to dump the ball off. We see it with Austin and Eckler on the Chargers. We've seen it with Nyheim Hines. Paris Campbell loves to run those, quick slant kind of plays. So it's a potential combination that could provide a lot of points should it come, and it's something that you could get for really cheap.
I actually like that buy because T.Y. Hilton is a free agent this offseason. I don't know if they're going to re-sign him. And especially if they don't, I think Paris Campbell's value goes up even more because he's kind of a similar build of a receiver to T.Y. Hilton, rather than kind of like a big receiver like Pittman. And I think he would take a lot of those targets. So I'm with you. I'm a big fan of Paris Campbell also. And then again, this is assuming, as we always do, that they recover normally and are back to how they were before.
See, I'm more on the avoid fade Paris Campbell. I don't like injury guys. I just think injury guys are guys to stay away from. He's just gotten 2 major injuries in back-to-back seasons. He's like you said, like playing when he played that one game, like he showed that he's pretty good. But then he got hurt again. So like the best type of player is an available one, and he's just not been available. Obviously, if you can get him for super cheap, if you can get him for a pick outside the top, 30 picks, whatever it is, like sure, because at that point you're just taking dart throws in the rookie draft anyway. But other than
Question:
that,
what I want to hear both of your answers. Would you trade an early third for Paris Campbell?
no.
I would.
JT,
No,
you say yes.
this draft's too good.
Yeah.
No.
I think
Okay,
the real
that's a fair
question is,
answer.
would you sell Paris for an early third? Just because you think about what it took to draft him, probably an early second round pick a couple of years ago. I understand his value's probably done nothing but go down, but I think if what JT was saying is right, like if you can find an owner that doesn't like Paris Campbell, then go ahead, buy him because you can get him at a great deal, a late second probably minimum. But I think that if there's an owner in your league that likes Paris Campbell, it probably you wouldn't be able to pick up for just any third round pick. Maybe on draft day if there's someone spicy on the board.
Yeah, like I get what Jake's saying about injury guys, and I would, if you guys want to just move into who my sell is, like when I have like a random flyer, like I don't mind getting an injury guy because it's like, especially at like a third round pick, like I like what Paris Campbell can potentially be, and out of the third round in
That's
this
the
year.
point. Is that like I would buy, like I said, I'd buy him for like a mid to late third round pick, but there's a very slim chance that you're gonna get that based on what the owner likely had to use in draft capital to get him in the first place. So I don't think I would be able to come for a deal for him. But if you can get him for that price, I would be in.
Yeah, but we're push and pull. Maybe he's a throw into a different trade that you're trying to get, like for a different player. Like it's someone that you could acquire for fairly cheap. Like he's not a first round.
100% JT.
Yeah,
He's the perfect player that if you're doing a trade, throw him in because that's where you get him real cheap. You move on to your sell now, but that's an excellent point.
yeah. So on the flip side of the coin, someone who I think is starting to get overvalued and someone that I'm looking to sell this offseason, I don't actually have him personally, but someone that I would be looking to sell is Mike Williams. I was a big believer in Mike Williams from his Clemson days. I liked what he was doing at Clemson. Then moving to the NFL, he did have 1,000 yards in I think it was his first season he had 1,000 yards. Second season, sorry, third season because he got injured. He had 10 touchdowns in his second season. He had 1,000 yards in his third season. He just couldn't put it together so far. So a lot of people still believe in Mike Williams. It's just he was injured in his first year, so we didn't see it then. Then he's been banged up a couple of times. Like he has played in most of the games, but he was injured for most of the games. And now you have Justin Herbert at quarterback. So people are probably saying like Mike Williams with Justin Herbert and Justin Herbert in his second year, Mike Williams is primed for a breakout. I don't think it's going to happen. I think this was the year if it was going to happen. Justin Herbert was just chucking the ball. Like he had no fear. He was throwing it deep. And granted, some of them were to Mike Williams. But I think Mike Williams is that guy who's going to get hurt by those pass interference calls because if it is on target to him, he's probably getting taken down before the ball gets to him or interfered with, and you're not getting those points, unfortunately. So it just hurts his fantasy value. Not to mention the Chargers are in prime position to go out and, either get a wide receiver in free agency or get a wide receiver through the draft. They also have a few other wide receivers who are those kind of burner types. They're not as big or physical as Mike Williams that can jump up and get it, but Tyron Johnson, Jalen Guyton, they do like to run, go verts and stuff like that. So he's just someone who I think probably has a lot of value right now, just based on where he is. And I don't see him maintaining that value.
Is he a free agent in this offseason right now? What's the situation with that?
I think he's on the team this year.
I think,
Okay.
yeah, I was gonna say, I think he's a free agent next offseason.
Yeah, I think he's on the team this year, but he'll become a free agent next year. Is what
I think you're right though, because if the Chargers don't draft a receiver in this draft or very early in the draft, I think you're right. That could be a really good sell because he's going to start getting some nice hype if they don't pick a receiver like one of these top guys.
Yeah, and with Keenan Allen injured for a few games this year, like Mike Williams finished the year. He played every game. He missed one game. And he finished the year as in half PPR wide receiver 46. It's just, I'm not. I used to be a big believer. I think now is the time to cut ties, especially because I believe he's going to be one of those put him on your radar kind of guys. Like I said with Christian Kirk last week. It's just someone that I'd rather just have off my hands and have a more, for sure kind of guy, someone I could kind of rely on more.
Yeah, I really like that sell a lot. I think you nailed that one right on the head. Just to chime in, I looked it up. He is a free agent following the 2021 season because the Chargers did exercise his fifth-year option.
Really quickly, what would you be looking to get for him? Like a mid-second?
Yeah, I think that's fair value. Right around mid-second, yeah. And to be honest, I think if you wait before the draft, like I'd move him before the draft, but I really do think you could push that early second for Mike Williams. Like he is a name player. Like he's got a brand to him. People recognize he's playing for the Chargers. He's got that young, fiery quarterback on his team. I think you could get an early second for him. And at that price, I'm selling because like we mentioned, we keep alluding to it. There's going to be a lot of good wide receivers in this draft, and I'd rather just take the chance on one of those guys than hope for a fourth or fifth year breakout for Mike Williams.
Yeah, I think we covered that one pretty well. So we can move on to Lounis. Who you got in buying and selling?
So to start off with our buy, I've got the Jaguars rookie receiver, Laviska Shenault. I'm guessing people listening kind of have an idea of why I'm so high on him. That is because obviously they secured the number one pick. And what is it? And Trevor Lawrence is going to be starting at quarterback next year. As for Shenault, he's been someone who we've seen this year. If they get the ball in his hands, what is it? If they get the ball in his hands, he can make plays. Like every time they get the ball, he's almost kind of like a running back at wide receiver. And I like his potential a lot. I do think there is somewhat of a decent chance that the Jaguars bring in another weapon this offseason, whether it be through the draft or through free agency to help support Lawrence. But I don't know, Shenault, I think you can kind of almost buy low on. Like we saw toward the end of the season, the last 2 weeks of the season, he had He had 2 straight pretty good weeks to end the year. Week 16, he had 5 catches for 48 yards and a receiving touchdown. And then week 17, he had 6 for 68 and 2 receiving touchdowns. And I don't know. He's someone that I like heading into next year that I don't think really he hasn't been talked about at all. Like I don't know if you've seen like just in the dynasty community, I feel like he hasn't really been talked about much at all. And I like him heading into next season. I think we're gonna get more into the coaches, but we've seen today the Urban Meyer news, and we'll get more into that in a little bit. But I think that he's someone that would be utilized a lot in that kind of offense. I'm sure he's someone who offenses will give carries to, ton of screen passes, ton of slants, just to get the ball in his hands, because once he does, he's a big playmaker. So he's someone I like as a buy this offseason.
Yeah, I mean, I have some hesitations with Shenault just because of the drop issues that he's had this season. But I do like the hire of Urban Meyer for Laviska Shenault. I do think that they could try to use him in that similar role to the way that they used Curtis Samuel at Ohio State, in which they just try to get him the ball in as many ways as possible, whether that's out of the Wildcat, whether that's a screen pass, whether that's out of the backfield, or just a straight up pass. I think they're going to try to use him in a lot of different ways. I said this coming into this season, and I think Urban Meyer is the type of creative offensive guy to get that done. So I do like this one, but I do think the price tag might be a little high because people know that Lawrence is coming in and Meyer is coming in. So I think people are thinking very similar to you in this sense.
Yeah, that sums it up for me. I guess I lean with Jake there, but we kind of all think he could be something very special on the Jags.
Yeah. No, I've always just liked his talent, especially his elusiveness at his size. But so moving on to myself, he had a great season last year. He's an extremely talented receiver, but my sell is Amari Cooper. Now, if you own him, you kind of have some leverage because, like I said, he had a great season last year, especially with a backup QB. Considering it wasn't Dak for a majority of the season, he still had a good year. The Cowboys have an out in his contract after next season, where normally he's getting paid $20 million annually. And if they want to cut him next offseason, they only owe him $6 million, which they can split between the 2 next off seasons. So maybe 3 each. And I wouldn't be totally surprised if they do it. I think CeeDee Lamb is going to take over pretty soon as the wide receiver 1. I think they'll have to make a decision on Gallup, whether they let him move somewhere else or whether they move on from Amari Cooper and they keep Gallup as the 2. He's someone who I'm just saying I think his value is really high right now, and I think now is the time to sell him because, like I said, he just came off a great season. Cowboys can move on from him, which I think they should. I think, like, I don't know, especially once it never. That's why the CeeDee Lamb pick didn't really make sense to me because you already have Gallup, who's an extremely talented young receiver. You've had some good slots. I'm forgetting their names off the top of my head, but we've seen them make plays this year. And then Amari Cooper, who's obviously an extremely talented receiver, and you just give him $20 million per for like a long-term contract. And then you go and draft CeeDee Lamb in the first round, which don't get me wrong, CeeDee Lamb has been amazing. Yeah, I think he's an absolutely phenomenal receiver. I think he'll be a stud and a star for years to come. And I think he will take over the number 1 role. But I think while you have this offseason and he's going to be entering next year again as the number 1, I think now is the time to sell him and just get good value out of him. Because I think stuff's going to change pretty soon in Dallas.
All right, real quick. Let's do a price tag on both Laviska Shenault and Amari Cooper. What do you guys think you value both of them at?
What would I buy them at? Or
let's start with Shenault. Let's start with Shenault. What you think he's worth? What you think you could get him for?
Right.
I think a pretty late second.
I think he's probably. I think he's valued at the early second at minimum because I think he was drafted. He was drafted near the beginning. He was drafted mid-second, and now there's going to be a lot of hype about him. I think he might be until the late first, kind of.
Late second, Lounis.
No,
Clown's going back on.
Part of me saying this is I expect the Jaguars to bring in another receiving weapon for Lawrence. If they don't, I agree with you guys. He's worth the early second, almost late first. I'm just projecting how free, which I guess I shouldn't have done. Like it's kind of a projection of future offseason moves. I hope the clown mask is fitting well. But again, that's the projection, because usually when teams bring in that top quarterback, they'll usually bring in another weapon for him too. And that's what I think the Jaguars are going to do this offseason. But if they don't, I agree with you guys. He is in that early second range.
Don't think they do. They have too many holes to worry about wide receiver, especially when they just took one in the second round last year.
You could have said the same thing about the Bengals, and the Bengals brought in T. Higgins for Joe Burrow.
Well, the Bengals had AJ Green and Boyd, which, like, an aging AJ Green. He didn't even want to be on a team this year. People thought he was going to be traded or sit out. So, like, I understood that one. But with Chark and with Chenault there, I just think they have too many holes to fill to worry about a wide receiver.
If anything, if they brought in a receiver, I feel like it should impact the value of Chark more than Chenault, just because, like we were saying before, if he's gonna play that Curtis Samuel role, I feel like they could almost use Chenault more as a running back. Maybe it impacts the value of James Robinson then. I don't know.
I think.
Yeah, I think it's either Robinson or Chark. I feel like Chenault, no matter what, he's such a dynamic athlete that if you like his talent, then no matter who they bring in, unless maybe it's Rondale Moore, it shouldn't really impact your valuation of him. I can understand if you don't like him and you don't want to buy him, but if you have Chenault, you're not selling regardless who they bring in for a late second round pick, unless he plays like crap during the season.
Yeah, I'm with Frank and JT on this one. Chenault has to be, getting close to that late first value just because of the direction that we think this Jaguars offense is heading in with the additions of Lawrence and Urban Meyer.
Yeah, like, not to be redundant, but he was probably drafted in the mid-second, maybe even early second. He's played fairly well. Not a world burner, but he's shown some stuff, and the hype of Trevor Lawrence being there is just going to increase the value more. That being said, what about Amari Cooper? Would you trade Amari Cooper if you had him for mid-first?
Yeah. Not even. I don't think you can get that.
Zero hesitation.
I feel like the question is almost, who would you rather have, Cooper or Waddle?
I mean,
Waddle.
Yeah.
It's going to depend where he goes. But
I mean, I've seen a lot of Waddle to Miami at pick 18.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
Reunite him with Tua in Miami, and I think that's a great spot. I mean, I don't think the Dolphins' weapons are really putting a threat here to Waddle's target share here. So I think it's a great move. Tua's comfortable with him. If that's the case, I would take Waddle over Amari Cooper in a crowded offense, potentially being cut at the age of 28 every time.
But none of you guys would have Chenault over Cooper, right?
No shot. You can't.
Not yet. No.
No. So you got.
What are you selling Cooper?
I was gonna ask. You gotta have Cooper in that kind of. If we're selling Chenault for a borderline late first, like Cooper's got to be a little above that somewhere.
Yeah, I have Cooper around pick like 110. Put it that way.
I feel like you'd almost have more success trying to sell Cooper to a contender for picks outside of this class, just because everyone, we are getting into prime rookie hype, and this class is looking, if you're in a super flex league, especially, there's so many quarterbacks that it's just driving the value of these first round picks up a whole lot. So, I feel like you can almost get for Cooper to a contending team a 2022 first and second, whereas right now you would only get that late first, and that's a maybe. Like, how if you're a team with a 110, unless you're really a contender and you need a stable receiver, like, how many people are giving up 110 for Amari Cooper right now?
Point.
I was gonna say, I don't know if I'm giving up 110 for Cooper.
I think there's a good chance you can get, Jalen Waddle at 110, which is what we just said I would take over Amari Cooper. So I agree. It's going to be, the trade market on Amari Cooper is going to be very tough. Very, very tough. I agree. I think the strategy Frank laid out there of trading him for future picks, like not just this 2021 draft class, because everyone knows this class is good. This class is deep. There's a ton of quarterbacks, so super flex, those early first round picks are jacked even further up. But people just tend to forget. And like, what the thing is, picks gain more value the closer we get to rookie draft time because people can put a name to the pick. When they can put a name to the pick, it becomes more valuable because people are like, well, that's basically like trading Jalen Waddle compared to, back in week 3 where it's like, oh yeah, my first round pick, it'll probably be a late pick. Who cares? Like that, the mindset changes around draft season, and these draft picks become exponentially more valuable in the eyes of the owner of them as we get closer and closer to draft time. And that's just something you got to deal with, especially in the draft as loaded as this one. These picks aren't going to be moved very easily.
All right. So that basically does it. To wrap up, we do have the news. It dropped today. This should be, I don't know when this will release, maybe Saturday. So today we're recording on Thursday behind the scenes. Jaguars signed Urban Meyer as the head coach. We're going to do a breakdown of the coaching carousel probably next week. I don't really anticipate any other coaches getting signed prior to next week because a few of them are still in the playoffs right now, a few of the candidates. So real quick, just 30 seconds or so, do you guys think Urban Meyer will be a good NFL head coach?
Like it in terms that they're going to pair him with a quarterback that he's very familiar with. Whether it's going to be Trevor Lawrence. I hate people saying like, oh, it might be Fields because of Ohio State. Urban Meyer didn't coach Fields. He was gone by the time Fields had got to Ohio State, transferred from Georgia. He's going to take Trevor Lawrence, but he's still familiar with Trevor Lawrence's game. He coached against him at Ohio State. I just think it's such a good pairing that I like it moving forward for the offense. Overall, though, I just hope Urban Meyer does not treat the Jaguars like it is a college football team, because when people try to do that, it never works out. So,
well, we've seen with Urban Meyer, when the going gets tough, you just leave.
So,
that was actually hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry if I'm jumping over you here, Lounis, but I do just want to get a couple points out, and then we could end that. It's just, I never really love hiring those, essentially career college coaches to the NFL position. It almost never works out. It rarely ever does. Can Urban Meyer be the guy that breaks that mold? Sure. But there's just a lot of other question marks with Shad Khan, I believe is his name, the Jaguars owner, also saying that he's going to help with the GM role. That never works. There's just a lot of stuff going on there.
Oh, Jesus. Did he actually say that?
Yeah.
Okay, if he said that, I might retract everything I said. I didn't know that.
Yeah, there's a lot
not Brian how that works out.
Yeah, there's a lot not going in that kind of direction. Shad Khan said it about himself, not Urban Meyer doing the GM role. Shad Khan said he himself, the owner, will be helping with the GM role.
Yeah, that's worse.
Yeah, like we're talking like Jerry Jones, basically. Like, and I mean, sometimes it does work, but with Cowboys haven't won a Super Bowl in forever, so it can't work that well.
Your Super Bowl pick, I'll never let you live that down.
I said they were making it to the Super Bowl, and there was a material change. You saw Dak Prescott leave his ankle on the field. It's completely different.
Yeah, that was the only reason
they could have been in the playoffs.
Not like they were 1-3 with the one win being Atlanta fucking up so badly.
They could have made the playoffs they were a game out of the playoffs now without Dak Prescott. They could have easily made the playoffs. And then once you're in the playoffs, you just gotta win a couple games in a row to make the Super Bowl. They don't even have to win the Super Bowl. Stand by it, material change. I'm free of all sin on that one. If you guys don't have anything else to add, we could wrap it up.
One thing I just want to add really quickly, and Not that we need to hype up Trevor Lawrence any more than he currently is, but one thing that I think we will see from Urban Meyer is a little bit of running from Trevor Lawrence, more than people are expecting. I mean, he does run a whole lot in college. I feel like people may be thinking that he just, that you won't see any designed runs. I think that that's something that Urban Meyer will bring is a versatile running attack to this team using Shenault, Trevor Lawrence, and James Robinson, which I can find. I hope will be pretty interesting.
I think it's going to be real interesting.
I think Urban Meyer, from his time as Ohio State, he rarely, besides Ezekiel Elliott, who's a generational talent, he rarely ever used only one back. It was usually he used
that's how a lot of college systems are. Just because you have, especially at a program,
you might bring that philosophy.
Especially at
we
a
saw
program
Chip Kelly do that too.
Yeah, but especially at a program where Ohio State, where you have multiple 4- and 5-star running backs just sitting around, like, yeah, sure.
I do find it nearly impossible for James Robinson to see
Never
the
have
same
a season
this year, just because of how many touches he did have, and that there are no other running backs. But like I still think James Robinson will have a very solid role, and he will be a good running back this upcoming year. All right, but sounds like that's it. We ran kind of longer than I expected. It's not a lot.
Yeah, we couldn't even get to one segment.
We're gonna have a coaching carousel. We're gonna do a deeper dive into that next week, so look out for that. I feel like a lot of good breakdowns on specific players for this. That's gonna be something that we'll be doing more often because it's the off season, so it's time to really take a step back and really look deep into what these players are doing and what their values are going to be. But yeah, that's it. Follow us on 3rd and 20 if you haven't already. 3rd and 20 on YouTube. We're starting to hit those upticks in views. Thank you guys for watching us there too. If you're on YouTube, thank you. Click the subscribe button. I don't know where it is. I just know the YouTubers do that, so I want to be one of those.
I'm usually on the top, so it'd be like I think bottom right.
It's somewhere.
Bottom left.
Yeah. I'm signing autographs too. I saw that we had a lot of views. Can
we get one pat, JT? One pat on the back.
One pat.
Yeah.
One pat. I know that I'm a celebrity status now, but don't treat me any different than you would anyone else. I'm still the same JT that everyone knows and loves. That's all I got. Thank you, guys.
JT, the 100 views changed you.
You don't know what it's like to put out content for an hour and a half once a week. It takes a lot. Not everyone can do it.
Thanks, guys. We're signing off.